All right, on today's show, we talk about why Paul Mainieri, the Gamecocks baseball head coach, can lead Carolina back to the promised land. Locked on Gamecock starts right now.
You are Locked On Gamecocks, your daily podcast on the South Carolina Gamecocks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, guys? Welcome into Locked On Gamecocks. I am your host, Chris Marler. It is great to have you along. We've got another new hat. According to Amazon, only one day until my new Carolina hat that I've rushed ordered gets here. But regardless, I appreciate all of you being here. Thank you for making Locked On Gamecocks your first listen each and every day. Shout out to our everydayers. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts, as well as on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Our show today is brought to you by our good friends at FanDuel. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can get $5 and get a 3-week free trial on NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started today. All right, guys, play it cool. We are joined by my other boss, Matt Moscona here from 104.5 ESPN.
You're fired.
Already?
You're fired.
Is it because the hat? Is it because the hat I wore?
That orange hat? Why would you wear an orange hat on your show, you idiot?
Yeah, Hatgate has really is infiltrated multiple platforms of my working jobs and all that good stuff. No, we're joined by Matt Moscona, who is as close as I feel like to the LSU program in a number of different sports as you can be. Also launched a new venture, LouisianaSports.net, covering all things Louisiana Saints. Also SEC stuff. Go see some wow. Good start. See me write some stuff there.
Words are hard.
Anyway,
hard when you wear an orange hat and you cover South Carolina.
Listen, I only brought you on here because I can't say this coach's name correctly to save my life. Paul Mainieri. No, we've talked about this off air.
So he was hired at LSU in late 2006. Yeah, it would have been 06 because 07 was his first season. And the first time I ever said his name on radio, I said Mainieri. I added a syllable. So there's a lot of vowels, bro. I'm a Moscona. I get it. People get screwed up with the vowels, but it's Mainieri.
Yeah, I'm a Marler. My family is white trash from rural Alabama. So it's not as difficult to me. It's big facts. A lot of I's and a lot of vowels in Mainieri's name. But I want to talk to you about this. We're doing the show today based off of kind of getting to know the enemy, because LSU obviously is a team that South Carolina plays in the early part of the season in September, coming to Williams-Brice. But also, there's very few people, and I think that have been around Paul Mainieri like you have, and covering him at LSU. And I think it's still a little bit of an unknown, just because you've seen the sport of college baseball really explode over the past couple of years. Tell me first and foremost what South Carolina fans can expect in getting with Paul Mainieri and the hire they made this past summer.
So you're getting a Hall of Fame coach,
right?
Like, that's not even really a debatable thing. He has won everywhere he has been and will win at South Carolina.
Yeah.
He knows how to structure a program. He knows how to coach the ball game. He knows how to maximize his players. He will feature defense. He loves the hit and run. And he just needs someone to recruit for him. Paul's not the guy that's going to go to the showcases and jet set all over the country. So, and I know Carolina has a staff in place, including a coach that might be a coach in waiting, that should check that box. And having Ethan Petrie back helps tremendously, obviously, as he gets started. But you don't win at the level he has won for as long as he has won without knowing what you're doing. Ray Tanner's not an idiot. He knows what he just hired. He competed against Paul Mainieri. Paul is going to win at South Carolina. My big question is if he's going to be able to get the talent necessary to win a national championship at South Carolina, because that's going to require insane NIL buy-in.
Yeah.
And Chris, Carolina baseball fans have tasted the top of the mountain. They expect it. And they're not wrong to expect it. But if that's your expectation, then the resources invested in the program have to match that expectation. And I don't think that's the case right now at South Carolina, which is why I don't know that it's possible. Paul's going to win. He's going to win games. They're going to be sound. They're going to, I mean, they're going to be good. They're going to be really good because he's really good at what he does. But to win a national championship, you have to have enough players to win in Omaha once you get there. And I don't know if Carolina is there. That's not a Paul question. That's a Carolina buy-in question. I don't have the answer. You might. Your listeners and viewers might, but I don't have that answer.
You know what it reminds me of with SEC baseball? It reminds me a little bit of like the comparison, I think, the correct comp in terms of like where the teams fall and the competitive nature of it. It almost reminds me of not even a sport. It reminds me of football recruiting, because you have so many teams that are stacked inside the top 15 to 20 programs in the country and are all competing from this pool of talent. And like, I mean, you could be the 10th best team in this conference and be a top 20 team. And I think one of the things, and I compare LSU a lot to this with South Carolina, and you talk about like the level you need to get from an NIL standpoint, especially, is I don't know if Carolina, the NIL part of it, if they're comfortable yet with the idea of, okay, we are a multifaceted program and athletic department where you're going to be good and we want to be good in multiple sports. It's not like Georgia or Bama where it's like, hey, we're going to put a lot of NIL and money in this budget for recruiting for football. And also maybe a little bit for basketball, but like that's where a lot of the allocation of our NIL money is going to go to. Places like LSU, and you have like an elite women's basketball program and you have an elite baseball program, and obviously with football, I think that's what South Carolina is probably striving to be a little bit, but it is difficult. Like trying to round up that amount of money and being able to like get enough, especially in this day and age of the portal, getting so much talent from that.
Well, and the tricky thing with the portal too is, I mean, you can win recruiting battles with elite prospects and get them on campus. And if the freshman year doesn't go how they think, they can enter the portal. Like LSU just had a kid this past year named Cam Johnson.
Mm-hmm.
Cam Johnson, and I know you played, but so like this will resonate. Cam Johnson is a left-handed pitcher who throws 98, 99.
Is that number 99 on your for LSU?
No, that was Christian Little.
Okay.
But Cam Johnsons don't ever show up on college campuses. They don't.
Right.
Like that's a top half of round one guy. They signed for $5 million, $3 million, and they never play college baseball. But he showed up at LSU. Great arm talent. His horizontal break, I had a scout tell me, his horizontal break would have been top 10 in Major League Baseball this year. So like the stuff is undeniable.
Yeah.
But he was like Rick Vaughn, man. Like, like the little stand-up thing with all the ball marks all over it. Like that was Cam Johnson. He couldn't throw a strike. So they couldn't give him innings because he couldn't throw a strike. And so he transferred. He's at Oklahoma now. So that's just the nature of college baseball now.
Yeah.
And the strange part is you have to sometimes lean on those guys as opposed to like team roster guys who can pitch at this level or play at this level, but they're not the prospect with the higher upside. So you got to play the prospect with the higher upside. It's a challenge, man, for college baseball coaches. And the landscape's changed a bunch since Paul has been out. But I'll tell you this, Chris, like on a personal level, I think the world of Paul Mainieri. Okay. Yeah. I've known him for a long time. Saw Coach and Karen, his wife Karen, not long ago having lunch. I mean, they were always present, even after he retired. I mean, he was everywhere in the community.
Yeah, I saw that.
And he's a genuinely good man. Like, there's a charity event that he and I kind of he was always the guest of honor, and I am seated every year. And he's, there's a lot of coaches that my son's here. Sorry, there's a lot of coaches and dignitaries that will. That's Chris. That for events like that, they'll kind of come late, and as soon as they do their hello, how are you, they sneak out the back door. Paul and Karen were the first people there, and they were the last people to leave. They stayed the entire event. They took every picture. They shook every hand. They signed every autograph. They're present, and they're good, like genuinely good people that are going to be great for that community. Like, I'm sad coaches isn't here anymore. Like, on a personal level, like I'm not going to walk into Phil's on a Friday for lunch, and I'm not going to see Paul in the booth with Karen anymore.
Right.
Eventually he'll come back. I think, they built a house here, and I think he'll retire here. He said that. But like, you got a great coach. You got a great person. You got someone that's going to push his players, and some of them are going to hate him because he pushes them hard, but he maximizes them. They'll all come back afterwards and say, I appreciate what you did. He's got a little bit of old school in that. He's in every freaking baseball coaching Hall of Fame, man. He's in the college baseball Hall of Fame, the American Coaches Hall of Fame. He's great. He's going to be great. He's just got to get players to win at the highest level, and that's more a Carolina question than a Paul Mainieri question.
I think the thing that jumped out the most, and we'll get you out of here in a second, is when you said his players will come back. A lot of those players are going to come back after being drafted and going into, achieve like their highest goal in this sport, which is getting to, a professional contract in Major League Baseball. So, last question for you, and this is going to segue into our next segment when you're gone, thank God. But the football game, obviously, between these two teams and programs, I have kind of given you a hard time with this because I think there is a path for South Carolina to win it. There's not a lot of people out of Columbia that are giving them a chance. Early perception of South Carolina on the LSU schedule. What is it from the outside looking in?
Oh, I hate the spot. I think LSU is better than South Carolina. I don't know. Look.
Oh boy,
I don't know what was Lenora Sellers. I don't know what he's going to be. I have no clue. I think Rocket Sanders is great if he's healthy, but I watch South Carolina. Like, that's not a talented football team. So what? They're not a talented football team.
I mean, they weren't last year,
and they're not now.
Okay,
not on the level that you're talking about competing with LSU
in that one game on the road.
But so this is the point.
Right.
This is where I started. I said I hate the spot. Because I've been to Williams-Brice, and I'm not just pandering because I'm on your show. I'll tell you this honestly.
I appreciate that.
I have a lot of respect for South Carolina because I watched that team go 0-11 under Lou Holtz in the first year, and they filled that freaking stadium.
Yep.
Like, that's a fan base that will fill their stadium even when their team stinks, and not every place is like that.
Yeah.
And that place can get rowdy, and it's a hard place to go and play. And that's an 11 a.m. Central, noon Eastern, which LSU's not used to playing that. It's week 3, so not everybody's got their kinks ironed out yet by week 3. So, yeah, I don't love that spot. Like, that's one where I go, okay, if you're LSU and you beat Southern Cal week 1 in Vegas, which you're favored, but again, challenging game. You play Nichols at USC. If you get past USC, you're going to get to the Ole Miss game in October undefeated because you got UCLA, who's atrocious. And South Alabama, then an open date. But it's just, dude, going on the road in the SEC anywhere is hard, especially when they're going to put 80,000 people in a stadium and they're going to play Sandstorm and wave white towels and all that stupid stuff at 11 a.m. It's a hard spot. So, I'm with you. Like, I don't think South Carolina is a very good football team. I don't think they're going to win a lot of games. But I do think in that stadium, that's a spot where if you go napping thinking you're just going to walk in and walk out with a win, they'll pop you. And I don't know what LSU defensively is going to be still. So that's the other question. I think the positive for LSU is I just don't think South Carolina's got a lot of athletes offensively.
That's fair. All right, listen, I know you got to run and I got to go finish this show and then pretend tomorrow morning at work that I've been up for 2 hours just like you have. So I appreciate the time and we'll see you soon.
Hey, 5 a.m. wake-up call for me to go work out is a 6 a.m. wake-up call for you. So just get your ass up.
Emotionally, it's way worse than that, though. Emotionally, it's like 3 a.m. So
you got to suck it up, man.
All right. I'll talk to you tomorrow.
Bye.
All right, guys. Appreciate Matt coming on here, helping me pronounce Paul Mainieri's name, and also giving a little bit of insight to behind the scenes stuff with what we can expect from Coach Mainieri while he is now here in the 803 and in Columbia. I'm excited for that. I know it's a ways off, but I wanted to open with that just because of the fact that I know his time is also allocated to some other stuff. And we're talking about LSU on this episode. We will talk more about it. We'll probably talk about some betting lines about it as well as it gets closer. So that being said, I want to talk to you guys about our friends at FanDuel again before we get into our next part of the show. You can tell we're getting close to the season, not just because we're talking more about FanDuel, but we're also having new ad reads, guys, which I'm pumped about. Probably sounds stupid, but man, we are close to the season. You've heard us talk about FanDuel before. It is America's #1 sportsbook. Well, we have something a little bit different for you. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5. Just bet $5, okay? You get 3 weeks of a free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Then with a YouTube TV-based plan, you'll be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon out-of-market game for the season. If you get the NFL Sunday Ticket with it, all you need is a Google account and a current form of payment. You can cancel anytime. That is a phenomenal deal. Just go visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn to download America's #1 sportsbook. Fired up for that. fired up for that. The updated odds for week 1, we've talked about this. Matt brought up the LSU game against Southern Cal. They're a 6-point favorite. I kind of want to jump all over that. The opening line for South Carolina and ODU still hasn't moved. It's still hovering right around 20 and a half. The closer we get to that, the more I feel like I'm going to hammer that. And there's also some other ones as well. Georgia Tech, that line moving significantly against Florida State here in week 0, just in a couple of days. We'll talk about all that and more coming up here. Especially, we will talk about and focus in on exactly how South Carolina can jump up and get LSU in the second part of this show. Make sure you stick around here. Locked On Gamecocks continues next. All right, guys, welcome back in. I appreciate all of you for joining us. This has been a fun start to the show, and it will only get better. We are going to continue to talk about getting to know the enemy and the LSU Tigers. That is a week 3 game for them. Week 4, week 3 game for South Carolina as well, going into the season. Before we do, I want to talk about something real quick. Locked On College Football. College football is back, and Locked On College Football podcast kicks off the action with a live season preview, 7 p.m. Eastern on Tuesday, August 20th. We're recording this on August 19th, which is a Monday, so make sure you get on the Locked On College 24/7 streaming YouTube channel tomorrow at 7 p.m. Eastern for a live show previewing the season. It's a 4-part series, covers each of the 4 major conferences with discussion on which ACC, Big 10, Big 12, and SEC teams have a shot at the expanded college football playoffs. I'm very excited to talk about this. It should be a lot of fun. We did a SEC preview a week ago, and went through all that and talked about the South Carolina's chances and with some of the other hosts from the Locked On shows. Be sure to check out this special. It's streaming on Locked On College's 24/7 YouTube channel or on the Amazon Fire TV app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. All right, so like I said, appreciate Matt coming on. And talking a little bit about LSU. Just, it's always good to know. I feel like we get so inundated and entrenched and like wanting to know as much about our team as possible. And we talked about South Carolina a lot. We've also talked a little bit about LSU and those 4 or 5 games that I keep bringing up, guys. I think they're going to be the ones that are pivotal to the season, where South Carolina can get an upset against a team in a few games that I keep saying it, no one's giving them a chance on. Now, just talking about LSU, I'm not going to break down the game necessarily or anything like that because it's still, a ways away. But I just wanted to make you familiar with what LSU has before this season. I do think it's a game they can get. I think what Matt said is the key there. Listen, LSU's roster is not the same as South Carolina's. That's not a dig at South Carolina. That's not anything negative about what South Carolina has been able to put in place or put together. Because if you look at the recruiting numbers, like Beamer has put in the past 2 seasons, some of the best back-to-back years they've had in recruiting since the early 2010s, right? And those classes don't, for lack of better words, grow on trees, guys. The years with Clowney and Lattimore and Stephon Gilmore and some of those guys, you were able to, for whatever reason, they were in this like back and forth constantly. I feel like with Alabama, they lost John Fulton. That's a name. If you guys remember that, some of you guys old heads in here that followed recruiting, but seemingly won every other, back and forth battle in the recruiting wars against them in the early 2010s. This isn't that deep of a class, but the roster at South Carolina has been really good. Like in terms of what you've been able to add with recruiting. It's not what LSU has. It's, those 2 teams and programs are in kind of different worlds from an NIL standpoint as of right now. Now, that being said, getting to know them, they lost. LSU last year had the number 1 offense in the country, scoring points per game and total yards per game. Jaden Daniels obviously wins the Heisman Trophy, still finished 9-3, which is crazy to think about in the SEC and how much talent they had on that team. You go into the year thinking you have the best player in the country on defense, maybe with Harold Perkins, and then you end up with the best player on offense. You have 2 first-round receivers. All of that's gone, minus Harold Perkins. The OC is gone as well. He is now at Notre Dame, working with Riley Leonard. One of the reasons I'm pretty high on Notre Dame this year, which is neither here nor there. And then you talk about the defense. The defense was atrocious. And I've heard Matt Moscona, the guy we just had on, my boss, get very animated when it comes to how bad that defense was. It is, if you talk to anybody close to that program, it was horrible, inexcusable, and awful to have the numbers that defense put up. DBU, as they love to call themselves, right? ranked 118th in the country in pass yards per game allowed. There was a game against Ole Miss where they gave up over 700 yards. I mean, like it happened multiple times throughout the season. They got into a back and forth with Florida at one point. Like it took Jaden Daniels to have a Superman game. That was like his Heisman moment. He had like 6 touchdowns and like multiple. It felt like 60+ yard runs and scrambles. That is a defense that was really, really, really bad a year ago, right? Now, here's the thing with LSU this season that I think a lot of people are discounting. I don't think anyone. How do I phrase this? This is one of the things I think this is unfairly a difference between these two programs, because when we talk about LSU, everyone knows how bad the defense was a year ago. It seems like everyone just kind of assumes, oh yeah, they'll be better. It's fine. They're LSU. They replace it. And then you talk about a place like South Carolina, and it's like, oh, okay, what had happened last year? Or what's the worst thing that we can think of? Because we're just not going to take them seriously. Oh, yeah, that's what will happen again this year. It's you guys have taught me this, I think, more than anyone in the comments. And I for whatever reason, it's so hard for me to believe, because I feel like I come to you guys once a week, and I'm like, did you guys hear this blatant disrespect? And you guys are like, yeah, we're used to it. It happens every year. It's like, what's the meme with James Franco where he's got like the noose around his neck in that old movie, and he's like, "Oh, first time." That's how I feel every time I'm talking about the disrespect at South Carolina. Like I was almost at Garner's. They don't garner it; it just happens all the time. Anyway, all that being said, I will say what LSU has done in the offseason is make a concerted effort to become one of the best defenses in the SEC. Maybe not this year, but in the upcoming years. There's too much talent on that defensive roster for them not to be. Brian Kelly, who I don't think was under a lot of heat or scrutiny. He doesn't have like he's on a hot seat or anything. But one thing that he did this offseason, it is not the same crew that was there a year ago. He went out and got 5 new defensive assistant coaches, including Corey Raymond to coach the DBs, who was the one of the main architects of that secondary when they had like, Patrick Peterson and Claiborne and Honey Badger, Tyrann Mathieu, you know what I mean? Like, obviously it's the same person, but in that secondary, when they started kind of taking over the moniker of DBU, that's who was in charge of it. Bo Davis, if you're not familiar with Bo Davis, he's like if Will Muschamp was like or Mike Bobo was like an actually consistently successful coach on the SEC. He reminds me of it's guy I refer to as like a U.S. congressman type of person with term limits. Like Bo Davis has been a college football coach with SEC programs for like, it feels like 20 years. He's always going to have a job. One of the reasons he's always going to have a job is he's possibly the best defensive line coach and recruiter combination in the entire country. He was at Texas last year. Now he's back at LSU again. They are going to be better. That being said, here's what I'm most interested in seeing this play out. And we're not going to get too into the ins and outs and X's and O's of that game. But the biggest question I have for that game as of today, and hear me out here, how does Dowell Loggins, Lenore Sellers, and Shane Beamer, when they go into the meeting rooms on Monday, the week of that game, what is the plan of attack? Because we'll know a little bit more about LSU in the first, by that time after their first 2 games. Like Nichols, we won't know much. You're going to play USC, which if there's one thing Lincoln Riley can do, it's definitely not make a brisket, but if one thing he can do, it is replace Heisman winning quarterbacks with other elite quarterbacks. Miller Moss was named the starter today. That's a guy that was named MVP of the Holiday Bowl, had like 370 yards passing, 6 touchdowns. They're going to attack LSU through the air. What does South Carolina do? What is the game plan? Because I think if you look at what their strength is as of today, it's not through the air, right? A lot of unproven guys in that receiver and tight end group. A lot of opportunity there, a lot of potential, and a lot of talent there. But as of today, that's one of the biggest unknowns on the whole team. Maybe the biggest unknown on the whole team, right? So how do they go about attacking them? I'm very interested in see this. And I don't know the right answer, guys. I'll be honest. As of today, I don't know the right answer, because do you want to stay within your own identity, which is what you probably want to be comfortable with? Or is it a situation where it's like, hey, the best way to attack this team is by attacking that secondary over and over and over again? And if that's the case, you might see Lenore Sellers throw the ball 30 times in that game. We saw maybe that's what happened maybe that's one of the reasons you saw it on Saturday, or we didn't see it, but you hear the reports back from the second scrimmage, which was, I mean, he put the ball up in the air a lot in that game. Maybe that's one of the reasons why. Maybe you're preparing him for a situation like that, because I think that as much as we don't know about this upcoming season, if this defense still, I can tell you from the rosters on there and talking to Matt and other guys over there in Baton Rouge, working for Baton or ESPN Baton Rouge over the last several months. If there's one thing you talk about from a roster standpoint, they've got dudes, but the secondary is where they're at their thinnest, right? That's where they're least talented at on that roster. So is that a situation where you think, hey, Lenoris, you got to go out there and throw the ball 30 times and go win us a ball game, man? There's a game every year. Gary Danielson said this, and I know people hate Gary Danielson. I always kind of feel like he got a bad rap, as annoying as he could be. I thought he knew the game very well because he'd been around it his whole life. He played at the highest level, too, in the NFL. But there's one thing he used to always say. He's like, there's one game a year. There's one game a year where you got to look at your quarterback and say, hey, man, you got to go win us a ball game. Is that this game for Lenoris Sellers? Because it's going to be one of them. And again, I stand firm on this idea that, man, like, go to FanDuel, put some money on it. Whether it's Ole Miss, whether it's Mizzou, whether it's A&M, or whether it's LSU, South Carolina is going to beat at least one of those teams. At least one of those teams. I think Mizzou is a very good potential. Like in terms of teams that could get got the most, I still think it's Mizzou because they get them the week after they play Oklahoma. But you heard what Matt said, and I've told you the numbers before. LSU coming to town for what is on they're watching 11 a.m. kick that they're not used to, and they don't really like playing in. On the road, you know it's going to be 1,000 blanking degrees. A really good opportunity there. So that is what we have for LSU getting to know the enemy. You've got tons of new faces. Kyron Lacey's a guy you're going to want to get to know at receiver. Could be very, very good. Chris Hilton's another guy that they have there. You have Mason Taylor. I almost said Mason Graham. Mason Taylor, tight end, going into his third year. He's going to have a really big increased production. They've got some dudes at running back that are very physical, especially at the point of attack where you've seen they've got some highlight film guys of them just truck sticking guys from a year ago. I'm not saying it's going to happen here, but just getting to know your enemy. Those are some guys that I think, and like the new faces. Then obviously Garrett Nussmeier, who's a guy that's been around the league. He's had various starts, a handful of starts over the last couple of years. Looked good in the bowl game against Purdue. I feel like all SEC teams look good against Purdue, not in a rude way, but fun fact about Purdue, in 4 of their last 5 bowl games against SEC teams, they gave up at least 40 points, which is tough to do. But a lot of new faces, a lot of talent that also might have the best offensive line in the whole country. When you look at the talent they have there, they have 2 potential first-round picks, including the number 1 overall tackle, Will Campbell. So that's what you're getting into with LSU. That's the getting to know the enemy thing. Let me know in the comments if you disliked this segment. I was planning on doing this for a number of teams. We could probably do it as we get closer to those games, but I thought it was an interesting situation because we were finally able to get Matt on, and he's somebody that's close to Paul Mainieri, so I wanted to keep with the theme with LSU. That is why we did that today. Now, that being said, we are going to finish out today's show. Before we do, we're going to talk about the ESPN Top 100 players that were released and the disrespect, of course, that came with South Carolina. Again, I don't mean to laugh. It's just expected at this point. You know what I mean, guys? Now, that being said, before we get into our final part of the show for today, do want to talk to you real quick about our friends at eBay Motors. You guys have heard me talk about them before. Listen, passion, drive, and patience is the formula for winning championships. It's also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle, level it up to peak performance. I'm talking superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number 1 ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay's Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back, because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay guaranteed fit, available only to U.S. customers. I encourage you guys, make sure, listen, long season, we want the players to be as healthy as possible. Make sure the cars are as healthy as possible. There's nothing. I want all of you to be safe more than anything. But I will also tell you, when we're all leaving Williams-Brice Stadium on a Saturday night, and it's seemingly going to take an endless amount of time to get out of that stadium and getting on what feels like a one-lane in and out of the entire situation, if your car breaks down, yeah, I'm going to say a prayer for you guys. I hope you're safe. I hope everything's fine. But I'm also going to be frustrated. So let's get our cars fixed. Let's get our cars ready to go for the season and make sure they are good and healthy, just like the players as well. All right. I appreciate you guys sticking around. We are closing out the show here shortly after this. The final part of our Monday episode of Locked On Gamecocks continues next. Stick around. We're back. All right. Listen. Final part of today's show, I was putting this together earlier, and ESPN came out with their top 100 players headed into the 2024 season. And, you know, like I said earlier, once a week, something happens, and I'm like, did y'all see this? The disrespect somehow that still shocks me, and probably shouldn't at this point. But ESPN comes out with their top 100 players going into the 2024 season. You had 34 total players from the SEC from 11 different teams. 10 of those 11 teams had multiple players on the list, the top 100, and there were no South Carolina players. Arkansas had one. I think it's Landon Jackson. He's a DN from there. He's a very good player. 6'7", I think like 240, really good off the edge. Had a field day against Bama last year, kind of put him on the map. Kentucky had two guys, and I don't have a problem with Kentucky having two guys. I think they've got, you know, a cornerback and a D tackle that we've talked about on this show before that I think are very, very good and have a chance to be maybe the best of their positions even in this conference. So don't have a problem there. But here's the thing, before I even get into the rest of them, because it's the usual faces, right? Like if you had to guess right now, who do you think the top three teams were in the top 100? Because it's not that hard to figure out, right? It's the same as it always is. Georgia, Bama, Texas. Probably because the name and the logo on the side of the helmet is Georgia, Bama, Texas. I'm not discounting the fact they have good players at all. Those are very talented rosters. Ohio State had 8. I don't think that's even wrong. I think Ohio State might have the best roster in the entire country, right? But Michigan had 5, Miami had 5, and it very much felt like, okay, if you're talking about those 6 schools, let me do some quick math in my head here, accounted for 34 as well. A third of the list came from those 6 schools. I guess my bottom line is this. There is no way, and I'll just say the word, there is no effing way in hell that there are 100 players in the country better than Debo Williams. There's not. I'll go a step further and tell you, I don't think there's 100 players better than Nick Imanwori. We'll find out about that. I think a lot of other teams will find out about that as well. Not as ready to say O'Donnell Fortune would be on that as you know, same situation, because I think he's going to be very good. He's obviously locked down one of those corner positions. But there's no way in hell that you're going to tell me that 100 players in the country are better than Debo Williams. There is no way you're telling me that 100 players. I'll tell you another thing. There's not a chance that you're going to convince me that 34 other players in this conference are better than Debo Williams. What are we talking about at this point? Like, do we have, like, if we just did, is it a Masked Singer thing where it's like you have to come out here and be like in an all black uniform without any logos on before you take it? Like, is it a situation where Carolina is like a 90s rom-com and they're the girl with the glasses that's like, oh my gosh, she's disgusting. She took her glasses off. She's beautiful. Is that what's going on just because of the Carolina logo? Like, there is no way in hell you could look at and evaluate football talent and players from across the country and across this league and tell me that 100 players are better than Debo Williams. It's a joke. It's a joke. That is all I have to say about that. We'll end the show on that before I get more heated than I should. I appreciate you guys joining us. Appreciate Matt for joining us as well. I hope all of you had a fantastic start to your week. It is Monday night. We're putting this out. We'll have another show tomorrow on Tuesday as well, and pretty much every day for the rest of the countdown until kickoff. We are technically, I think we're 12 days away now. We're going to be at 11 here in about a couple hours, but appreciate you guys a lot. Hope all of you had a great start to your week. So that being said, thank you for making Locked On Gamecocks your first listen every single day. Now make sure you go check out your second listen, the Locked On College Football podcast. From NIL deals to never expanding and never ending conference realignment rumors, Spencer McLaughlin gets you ready for an exciting season on the gridiron. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Y'all have a great night, guys.